welcome back to. Sorry, my bad. Greetings, and welcome back to another episode of the greatest show in the galaxy, the show where I, the curator, discuss my personal favorite show of all time, personal favorite franchise of all time, Doctor Who. And as you can see, we have a bit of a special guest on here today. This is Leela. This is a part of a bit of an experiment to see if I'm ready to have another dog again. And, all I can say right now is try not to get too attached to this little bundle of joy, because it's not really looking like she's going to stick around for that much longer. But anyways, we're not here to talk about Doctor Who, which, by the way, I actually named her Leela after a Doctor Who character. But we're not here to talk about that right now. Right now, we are here to talk about something interesting that I decided to bring up this episode. I mean, I was always going to have this topic brought up on the show at one point. However, certain events that happened last month kind of forced my hand and made me accelerate these plans a little tiny bit before I was fully 100% prepared for it, but it is what it is. So with the recent, and I use that term lightly, recent casting of Ncuti Gatwa as the 14th Doctor, I decided we were going to take a couple of weeks on the show to look at some of the actors who have played the Doctor in all of the Doctor's many forms, except this time we're going to be looking at the actors themselves, and more importantly, roles that they've had before and after playing the Doctor. Obviously, the title of today's video is a bit misleading. We will be covering a lot of what these actors used to do before they got the title role of the Doctor, or Doctor Who, which way you want to call it. But we'll also be talking a little bit about after they left the show, so don't worry about that. Hence this funny thumbnail that I casually put together. However, this being the show that I like to make on my own, we have several things I want to bring up first before we get down to the actual main topic. First of all, birthdays. Now, obviously, we will be covering birthdays from May 31st to June 6th. And starting us off on May 31st, we actually have several people. First of all, we have Linda Bellingham. She's depicted here in this picture right here as playing the character. I really hope I can pronounce the name. Darkula Tricristor. Nailed it. She was the Inquisitor during the trial of a Time Lord, Colin Baker's final season, and she also then reprised her role, and obviously given that incredibly confusing name in the first few seasons of the Big Finish series, Gallifrey. So, and obviously she sadly passed away several years ago, 2014, I believe. So, yeah, my condolences to her friends and family. Next, we have, also on the 31st, Claudia Grant. If you can't really quite recognize the actress, she's the one that played Carol Ann Ford in the documentary 50th anniversary special, An Adventure Through Time and Space. And then she also went on to portray the character of Susan Foreman in various Big Finish stories featuring the first Doctor. Next, we have Reggie Yates, I believe. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Yep, Reggie Yates, or Reginald. He played Leo Jones, the brother of Martha Jones' sister in the third season of the Modern Revival. Next, we have Brian Cox. Now, obviously, this guy is known for a lot more than just Doctor Who, but in the realm of Doctor Who, first one, we actually have someone from June 1st, I should say. He was the voice of the Elder of the Ood in David Tennant's final story, The End of Time, Part 1 and Part 2. And he also played Sidney Newman, the quote-unquote father of Doctor Who, in the aforementioned An Adventure in Time and Space. Sorry, I messed up the name there earlier. We also have on, I believe, June 2nd, if I'm not mistaken. Nope, still June 1st. We have Jonathan Pryce. He played the Master in the parody special, The Curse of Fatal Death. Next, finally, on June 2nd, we have John Colshaw. He plays, first of all, he's an impressionist. He does lots of really good and clever impressions of the Fourth Doctor. And he also, I believe, played the Fourth Doctor in various Big Finish or even parody episodes. He also does a lot of Big Finish stuff. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot of Big Finish episodes. And he's also the voice of the Brigadier in said Big Finish episodes. So he's a massively important figure in the realm of Doctor Who. In June 3rd, we have, hold on, Ian Gelder, who, if you can recognize him, he played the character of Mr. Decker in the 5-part story Torchwood, Children of Earth. He also has a few smaller roles. He played the Remnants in the Ghost Monument, as well as the Zelen in Can You Hear Me? So a couple of Jodie Whittaker episodes. Next, we have Penelope Wilson, or Dame Penelope Wilson. She played the character of Harriet Jones, the former Prime Minister. And yes, I know you know who she is. Next, we have Julie Gardner. She's an executive producer of pretty much all of Modern Who, from the early revival till, I believe, the current stuff, or maybe she left after Stephen Moffat left the show. I can't remember, but she basically has her name on pretty much every single modern era Doctor Who episode. You might not be able to recognize the face, but you can definitely recognize the name. Her name really does appear in pretty much every single episode in the credits. Next, we have Bradley Walsh. I believe this is June 4th for Bradley Walsh. He played originally the Pied Piper / Oddbob the Clown in the Sarah Jane Adventures episode Day of the Clown, before getting recast as Graham O'Brien, one of the companions of Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor. Next, we have David C. Collins, who played. Sorry, I apologize. He has several different roles, but mainly he played the character of Mordwin in the iconic Mordwin Undead, and he also did play a alternate version of the Doctor in Big Finish Unbound series, Full Fathom 5. And finally, on June 5th, we have Gareth Roberts, another person you may not be able to recognize the face, but you're definitely familiar with the name. Once again, he's another executive producer on pretty much all of the modern era stuff. He has his name in the credits of almost every single episode of the Modern Show. He has his name on a lot of Sarah Jane Adventures episodes. I choose to highlight people who aren't just actors in front of a camera, but also people from behind the scenes in the show, as it were. So happy birthday to all of you in this wonderful list that I just brought up. Thank you all. We quite literally could not do this without you. Now, speaking of people we couldn't literally do this show without them, and I'm talking both this show that I'm doing right now as well as the entire show overall, let's talk about probably the most important part of Doctor Who, the Doctor, or more specifically, the actors portraying the Doctor. Starting us off, obviously, is, and I'm going to continue saying it, the original, you might say, Mr. William Hartnell, or Bill Hartnell, to his friend. Now, obviously, for the most part, Bill Hartnell is mainly famous for two very specific roles, namely the Army Game and This Sporting Life. This is really the two roles that arguably gained him the part of playing the first Doctor. Obviously, the This Sporting Life actually came out on the same year that um, Doctor Who premiered. However, his first major film role was in a movie called Say It With Music, and unfortunately, I couldn't find an image of a poster or anything from that movie. I apologize, but yeah, I just felt like I had to mention it. He also has a minor role in the movie uh, The Way Ahead, as well as appearing as a sergeant role in one of the Carry On movies, specifically Carry On Sergeant, as you can see him right there at the bottom. This is part of a issue, if you will, with Mr. Will Hartnell, something that actually really bothered him as an actor, that in most, if not all of his roles, he was constantly getting typecast as the angry policeman sergeant type role. He felt too much like he was trapped in his own box, and I believe they actually do explore that in the aforementioned documentary, An Adventure in Time and Space. He was tired of getting typecast as the heavy, the muscle, the angry, authoritative figure. So in a way, getting cast as Doctor Who, the first Doctor, which was described to him as the Wizard of Oz meets Father Christmas, was somewhat of a breath of fresh air to him personally. So yeah, if you actually read some articles about the man and listen to people in interviews talking about him, the guy really, really, really loved playing the Doctor Who, whichever way you want to call it. Again, it's a bit questionable, especially considering that in the first 10 seasons, I think, in the credits, they didn't title the main character as the Doctor. They titled it as Doctor Who. So, yeah, it's a bit confusing when you think about it. Several other notable, I should say, film roles that Bill Hartnell has appeared in are Heavens Above, alongside Peter Sellers, and the Mouse That Roared, also once again alongside the iconic Peter Sellers. He also has a movie that up until fairly recently was considered to be completely gone, that there were no surviving footage from that movie, but was recently discovered to be found in its entirety, and I highly recommend looking it up and checking it out. It's called The Agitator. And obviously, William Hartnell, one of the many problems that the Hartnell era suffered from is Hartnell's rapidly deteriorating health, which obviously, as we all know, led to him leaving the show eventually, and obviously causing him to flub his lines. A lot like what I'm doing pretty much every time I open my mouth to speak. But he was, when you're an actor on screen, and back then they only had like one take, or rather one or two, three takes, and they didn't do reshoots and stuff. So it became a pretty serious problem for the production. So that's why it had to be removed. But in this film, The Agitator, which once again I wasn't able to find an image of a poster for, but he does a masterful long speech without missing a single word. So I highly recommend checking it out for that. And obviously, I couldn't really talk about William Hartnell without ending on the background picture of today's episode. Yeah, that picture just really gets me right here in my one singular heart. But moving on, we have the second actor to play the Doctor. We have Patrick Trouten. Now, here we start to see a little bit of a difference between the two actors who are playing the title role of the Doctor, besides just the physical appearance. Whereas William Hartnell was much more of a film and theater actor. Patrick Troughton, on the other hand, really delighted in TV roles. He was a very much a TV actor. He felt that the TV medium was his favorite form of medium, and he felt the most comfortable, the most natural in that very particular medium. He's actually, fun fact, believe it or not, he was actually the very first actor to portray Robin Hood on television. Now, obviously, when I heard Robin Hood, a lot of you were probably jumping to, wait a minute, but this, and yeah, like that's what I said. Television. He was the very first actor to play Robin Hood on television in a 6-part serial simply titled Robin Hood. And obviously, I couldn't find the image from that show. Otherwise, I would show it off right now. But several roles from before getting cast as the iconic Second Doctor include, among others, Richard III. Please try to ignore the dog in the background. I promise you, it's not Leela, but as you can see, she's getting interested. So yeah, King Richard III, and he also has a minor role in the movie Jason and the Argonauts. So yeah, that's something that I felt really kind of worth mentioning. And he also does have a minor role in a show simply titled The Old Curiosity Shop. Couldn't really quite find a better image of the poster, so that's really what I'm going with. Now, obviously, then he got cast as the Second Doctor, and his place in British television was forever cemented, and he became a TV icon. Now, since leaving the role of the Doctor, he also has several minor appearances on various different televisions, including but not limited to Danger Man, The Count of Monte Cristo, The Saint, No Hiding Place, and Z-Cars. He also has several minor roles in movies such as The Omen, The Scars of Dracula, Sinbad and the Golden Tiger, and Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. So that was the iconic Second Doctor, Patrick Troughton. As I try to convince Leah to come back here and join me as we are about to talk about one of my personal favorite doctors ever. Obviously, my favorite classic doctor is William Hartnell, but my second favorite classic doctor is the amazing Jon Pertwee. Now here we also see a bit of a slight difference between actors. This is one of the things that I actually really enjoyed discovering as I went on this journey of discovery, researching all these different roles from all these different doctors, is pretty much every single doctor actor either came from a different background or decided to specialize in a different environment. Actually, I don't think of it. I think it might have been. I think I might have made a mistake with one of these three, but I think it might have been Jon Pertwee on the Dracula. But whatever, we're doing it live, and, as I mentioned earlier. But yeah, so Jon Pertwee actually had 2 major film roles before landing the iconic role of the Third Doctor, namely Murder at the Windmill and Will Any Gentleman, alongside the previous aforementioned Doctor, William Hartnell. And yes, please try to ignore this. I know the poster actually says Mystery at the Burlesque, but I promise you, I looked it up and I double-checked it. this really is the poster for a movie called Murder at the Windmill. No idea what instigated the title change, but that's beside the point. Now, after 5 years as the Third Doctor, which at the time he actually, I believe, received a special award for being the first actor to portray the Doctor in more than 4 seasons. And yes, William Hartnell did actually have 4 seasons under his belt, however, because he was replaced with Patrick Troughton midway through season 4. So a lot of people assume that he just had 3 seasons, but no, actually William Hartnell had 3 seasons and 2 serials, and Patrick Troughton sort of replaced him in the middle of right after the second serial. So technically speaking, Jon Pertwee at the time was the first actor to do more than 4 seasons as the Doctor. And I believe, come to think of it, he might have actually been the first actor to do more than, nope, actually I think Nicholas Courtney still had the title at the time of being the only actor to do more than 5 seasons. But of course, that later changed when Tom Baker came along, and we will talk about him when it's time to talk about him. But after leaving the show Doctor Who, he very quickly established himself as, again, a TV actor, but more to the point, a TV host, a late-night host on the show Whodunit, which is an old British game show that lasted for a little bit over a decade, I believe, but he came quite late into it because he was doing Doctor Who for most of that time, but he took over the show and continued to be the host of that show right up until that show's cancellation at the end of the 70s. He also appeared he also has arguably his second most iconic role as the title character Wurzel Gummidge. I really hope I'm pronouncing it right because I have never really seen an episode of that show. I have no idea how that name is supposed to be pronounced. But yeah, arguably, some people really would argue that Wurzel Gummidge might actually be more iconic to Jon Pertwee than the Third Doctor. Again, I can't really speak too much about it because I haven't seen the show. But it's really nice to see that the Doctor role, as it were, doesn't necessarily suffer from the same type of curse that some people like to say is associated with the character of Superman. Obviously, especially during that time, actors who took on the role of Superman became so recognizable as that character that they just couldn't really get any other roles because audience members could not really disassociate the actor from the previous role that they've already played. Personally, I never really understood any of that. Like, an actor is an actor; he's tasked to play. He's tasked to play different characters. That's why they're actors. So I never really understood that. But it's nice to see that, at least specifically for Jon Pertwee's case, he had 2 massively iconic TV roles under their belt, in both the Doctor and Wurzel Gummidge. Maybe one day I'll learn how to pronounce the name. He also has appeared in a movie titled Ladies Who Do, and he also appeared in several different installments of the series of films simply titled the Carry On films. Obviously, as I mentioned previously, William Hartnell has also appeared in one of those, and Jon Pertwee, I believe, appeared in 5 or 6. I think. I'm not 100% sure on that. But if you are familiar with these films specifically, let us know in the comments below if it's worth checking these out, because as I've noticed during my research, there are quite a few of them. Now we get down to the actor that actually kind of inspired my namesake and also has under his belt, probably the wrong metaphor, but during his tenure had the companion that inspired the other name on this name tag right here, Tom Baker, arguably considered the most iconic Doctor of all time, and considered by many to be the best Doctor of all time. Personally, he is in my top five, as I mentioned earlier in my um, Doctor Who T ranking list episode, which, by the way, I have since updated that list a little bit. Just shuffled a few things around, added a few Doctors onto the list, but for the most part, the top five stayed the same. Tom Baker is still my top five favorite Doctor of all time. As great as he is, he couldn't quite make it to number one or even two on my list personally. Now, as far as his first major big break, as it were, his big role in movies, his debut, I should say, his cinematic debut, was as the iconic character of Rasputin in the movie Nicholas and Alexandra. That was something pretty interesting that I just really didn't know about um, um, Tom Baker, that he actually got his start as, playing Rasputin. Which now that I actually know that, yeah, I can see that it actually does make sense to me. He also has appeared in another movie titled Vault of Horror. Now, obviously, when you talk about Tom Baker, easily his most iconic role is the Fourth Doctor, which I can say the same about pretty much all of the actors who have portrayed the Doctor, that their most iconic role to me is playing the Doctor. But I don't think I don't think any other Doctor exemplifies that idea quite as much as Tom Baker does, because he is, even people who aren't fans of Doctor Who, like myself, and potentially you who are watching this right now, they know Tom Baker as the Doctor. They know the guy with the scarf, the guy with the long curly hair and the scarf and the hat. That's Doctor Who. He even appears in an episode of Family Guy where they're directly parodying Star Wars. He also makes a slight cameo in an episode of The Simpsons. He is as far as the general population, considered the main. He's considered the Doctor Who, unlike the aforementioned John Pertwee, which, as I already mentioned, some people would argue that Wurzel Gummidge is actually quite just as iconic to them as him playing the Third Doctor. Which actually, the reason I went on this incredibly long tangent is specifically for the reason that he didn't really do a lot in terms of movies and television after leaving his legendary 7-season run as the Doctor. Obviously, he came back in the 50th episode as my character, playing the character who has inspired my namesake. But beyond that, he hasn't really done that much. Now, I should probably, at least at this point out that during the 90s, there were several rumors running around that he was actually being considered to play Gandalf in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. However, he has since, I wouldn't say clarified, but referenced in an interview that he was asked to play a role in the franchise. He didn't necessarily specify which role. He didn't say Gandalf, but that was really the rumor going around during that time of the late 90s when those movies were getting made. He does, however, have a small minor cameo in the movie Dungeons and Dragons as a healer elf, which, according to many people who have actually sat through this movie, claim is pretty much the best part of that movie, is seeing Tom Baker as an elf. Once again, however, we do see a bit of a sort of difference between each individual Doctor. Like I said, each Doctor sort of, I don't want to say monopolized, but he sort of had their own avenue that they chose to explore. Obviously, you mentioned William Hartnell. It was mostly film as the generic type guy, the tough guy role with Trouten was more so television, with John Pertwee was more so comedy and hosting, specifically with Tom Baker. And once again, there is a reason why I'm going on this long tangent. Specifically with Tom Baker, it was voice acting and voice-over work. He does a lot of narrations. Obviously, he's got one of the most iconic voices in all of TV history, probably the most iconic voice of any doctor, so much so that the aforementioned birthday boy, John Culshaw, actually made a career imitating his voice for various comedy sketches and whatnot. But he played a villain in the movie version of The Magic Roundabout, and he also has various different voiceover roles in a slew of video games, including the likes of Warhammer 40,000, Sudeki, Cold Winter, and Medieval Resurrection, just to name a few. And of course, being me, I would be remiss if I didn't mention his iconic turn as the character of the Bendu in Star Wars Rebels in season 3, to be specific. He didn't actually appear after the season finale for that show, which still upsets me to this day. And the man is in his 90s right now, and with Star Wars continuing to do more and more and more projects, specifically in the realm of television, there's just a little part of me that hopes we will get to hear Tom Baker's iconic, unmistakable voice as the Bendu at least one more time in one of those live-action Star Wars shows. Mainly because a lot of people didn't watch Rebels because a lot of people just don't like animation Star Wars. It's their choice. I'm not going to say anything beyond that. I will just say they're missing out because that's really some of the best Star Wars that I've ever seen. Speaking of Star Wars, not really the best transition, but during the 80s, these two doctors kind of had their intro to their episodes inspired by Star Wars, so I guess the segue sort of still makes sense. We have the fifth Doctor, Peter Davison. Now, once again, we have an actor that really sort of made his mark on television, and for the most part, he really, after Doctor Who, he really just still remained a TV staple for a lot of years. He actually got his start as part of a children's show titled The Tomorrow People, a show I've never really heard of before, but it was a British kids show that was very educational in its nature. And please excuse me as I'm now being attacked by a mad dog. Of course, Peter Davison, the role that really made Peter Davison a household name before he was cast as the Doctor was in a little show called All Creatures Great and Small, which I believe lasted for several decades. He was cast, was added to the show several seasons after it already debuted, but he was very quickly made a regular on that show. You can actually see him right there, sitting on the couch with a dog, very similar to what I'm doing right now. Of course, this dog happens to be moving and licking and biting and such. He actually did return to several different specials of that show after leaving Doctor Who, right up until the show's cancellation. But after leaving that show, he actually has made his mark on several different other shows, namely A Very Peculiar Practice and The Last Detective. Moving on, we have arguably the most controversial Doctor, or at the very least, the most controversial of the classic era Doctors, Colin Baker. And I'm not saying he's controversial because he's wearing a Star Trek shirt. It was just a lot of really questionable decisions that were made, not by him, but by the showrunners during the time where he played the iconic role. I will, however, have to say this, and I'm not just. I really just want to take a little bit of a break and talk about Colin Baker. Much like all the other, well, most of the other Doctors on this list, has actually returned to reprise his role as the Doctor in various different Big Finish episodes and specials and whatnot. And in my opinion, out of the four Doctors that were in the monthly range of adventures in Doctor Who, specifically Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, and Paul McGann, I personally think Colin Baker is the best out of those four, both in terms of the acting, but also in terms of story and how the episodes are written. Because I think, I don't know how, maybe it's a bit of a compensation because his stories on the show really weren't that good, but I think he honestly has the best storylines, at least in terms of the monthly range of the monthly adventures, I should say, in Big Finish. So I felt like I really had to pause the show to shed some light on that for now. Unfortunately, Colin Baker, much unlike the rest of his peers, did not really have a lot of roles leading up to Doctor Who, and even less so after Doctor Who. At least not roles that actually have proper images that I can show on the StreamYard thing. He has appeared in several different stage and BBC adaptations before landing the role of the Sixth Doctor. One of which was in an adaptation of the Roads to Freedom trilogy by BBC, and he also has a small minor role alongside Anthony Hopkins in War and Peace. I'm not really sure if it's a movie or just a TV movie or a special. I'm not really sure. However, once again, much like Peter Davison had to wait until he could land a role on All Creatures Great and Small, which really did make him a household name and a name that all people who saw his face recognized. Colin Baker also had a similar turn when he was cast late into the show, The Brothers. I believe that's him right there on the far right, with the glass in his hand. Well, actually, all these people have glass in their hands, so ignore the fact that I just said that. But yeah, he was cast as a supporting character on that show, The Brothers, several seasons into the show's run. But he was very quickly, much like Peter Davison, made a regular staple of that show, right up until the time where he was briefly cast as Commander Maxil in the Doctor Who episode Arc of Infinity, where he shot his predecessor, Peter Davison, before he was cast as the next Doctor, obviously. And he actually did reprise that specific role in the Gallifrey series that I mentioned earlier on Big Finish. So I felt like that was a little bit of a cheek, but yeah. While he was still filming his scenes alongside Peter Davison in that episode, Arc of Infinity, he actually was in active conversations with John Nathan Turner to maybe possibly play the next Doctor once Peter Davison will vacate the role eventually. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, he does not have a lot of roles to speak of after leaving Doctor Who. Again, not roles with actual images and screenshots that I can actually share. He did a lot of stage work and stage performances, but as far as TV and movies, it was very few and far between to show off on this show. He had like an episode here, 4 episodes there, a minor role here and there. So really, there wasn't much to discuss with him. But like I said, Colin Baker, in my opinion, is the best of the four Doctors that have made the transition into the realm of Big Finish. So far, I do have to specify that word so far, because when I actually started this show, the greatest show in the galaxy, I had only listened to about 3 or 4 Big Finish episodes. I haven't really delved too deep into that quite yet. But since then, several weeks have passed, and I've already listened to about 90 of them. So yeah, I'm making my way pretty fast down that rabbit hole. But speaking of rabbits and holes, actually that is even a worse transition than the one before. But there really is no way to save this. Let's talk about Sylvester McCoy, the Seventh Doctor, which I believe he actually was the toughest one to actually pick out several good roles from before or after Doctor Who, because once again, much like Colin, he did not actually have a lot of roles with posters or images that I can use. However, this does actually fit well with the theme that I brought up earlier, of each individual Doctor having a different niche and a different avenue for them to explore. Like with Peter Davison going back to being a television staple, and Colin Baker being more of a stage actor. Sylvester McCoy, on the other hand, actually has a pretty interesting background that's actually pretty different from all the other Doctors. He actually started out his career as a stunt performer on something called the Ken Campbell Roadshow, sort of like a traveling circus, which actually does explain some of the shall we say, questionable scenes that he has in The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. Not this show, obviously. The episode that this show is named after, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, one of his, personally, one of my favorite episodes from the Seventh Doctor era, but it was very heavily leaning towards a goofy and slapstick comedy, which, as I mentioned earlier, that's really how Sylvester McCoy kind of got his start, as a goofy slapstick comedian on a traveling roadshow, which is actually where he picked up the idea of playing with spoons, which he's been seen doing since his debut episode, The Time of the Rani, and he also does play with spoons on various other episodes, including the aforementioned Greatest Show in the Galaxy, as well as The Happiness Patrol. And he also does that in a few episodes of Big Finish as well. So the whole playing with the spoons part, which has become quite synonymous with his Doctor, like I said, he picked that up on his own from the traveling roadshow. Unfortunately, since leaving Doctor Who, I'm sad to say that he missed out on 2 big major roles that probably could have put him even more into the public consciousness than he is right now. He missed out on an unspecified role in Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. I'm not really sure exactly what happened there that caused him to not get whichever role he was auditioning for. I could totally see him as Mr. Gibbs on that franchise, or potentially maybe even Rigetti. That's the guy that has his eyes keep falling off, one eye keep falling off, or potentially he could have made a really, really good Captain Barbossa, which really would have solidified him as a cinematic actor with the 5 movies that Barbossa has appeared. Yeah, he actually did appear in all 5 of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I'm just now realizing that. And he also missed out on playing the role of Bilbo Baggins in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. So interestingly enough, we actually have two actors we discussed today that have missed out on big major roles in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And just right now, thinking of the image of Tom Baker as Gandalf and Sylvester McCoy as Bilbo Baggins sitting in Bilbo's house and smoking a pipe together. For some reason, I just can't get that image out of my head. And if any of you out there watching this who are really good at Photoshop, could you please just Photoshop Tom Baker and Sylvester McCoy as those two characters from that scene and send it to me? I will be forever in your debt. However, speaking of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, obviously I couldn't really leave out the fact that he did actually got to appear in Middle-earth eventually as the character Radagast the Brown. One of the few saving graces of those Hobbit films, which really makes me sad that he pretty much got completely left out of the last one. We kind of see a shot of him right at the end of Battle of the Five Armies, and even then I'm not even sure that's really him. It could be just they just used a shot, a still image of him, and they just superimposed it on some other actor flying on an eagle and throwing Beorn into the battlefield. Yeah, I'm still not 100% convinced that's him. However, what I did appreciate is in the parody special, the Five-ish Doctors reboot, they actually do make a reference to that. They actually do take you in. There's actually a bit of a scene that takes place in New Zealand where you actually see Peter Jackson talking to Ian McKellen in the full Gandalf costume, talking about, yeah, we don't have Sylvester McCoy's anymore, so we can't he can't be in the scene. And Ian McKellen is just, who? I believe he was smoking either a cigarette or a pipe. I can't remember which it was. But he just drops whatever he was smoking. He was like, who? He was like, and Peter Jackson was the guy playing Radagast, the guy with the brown clothes, and he's got the long beard. Oh yeah, that guy. Honestly, the production's better off without him. And you just get up and continue to perform the scene without him. Now, that was just a little bit of a on-camera cheek, but from what I've been told, Ian McKellen and Sylvester McCoy were actually really good friends during the production of that whole trilogy, which may not have been the best trilogy, but it's a piece of cinema that we can now appreciate each in his own way. And that really does bring us to the end of the classic era Doctors. I was wondering if I should have included the 8th Doctor on this list, but given the fact that we only covered 7 Doctors right here, I'm actually a little bit tempted to save the 8th Doctor for either the next one, where we talk about all the modern era Doctors, or just save him for the 3rd week of the month, where I just talk about all kinds of other actors from Doctor Who have appeared in other roles. But that is a story for another time. Now, I have to really deal with this incredibly bitey monster that keeps nibbling on my fingers all throughout an episode recording. Again, like I said, try not to get too attached to this creature because it's really not looking very likely that we will be seeing her again in many episodes in the future. Yeah, I will keep you all updated on that when there will be something to update. But until the next episode of this show, I can be found on this channel on a show called The Northern Countdown, alongside Soda and Ben. Soda and Ben also have their own standalone show called Rewind the Tape. Soda, I believe, also has another show called The Squared Slice, where he talks mainly about wrestling. Ben has his own YouTube channel called The Multiverse of Geekdom, where he does all kinds of fun, geeky stuff on there. I also have my own YouTube channel, 50 Shades of Geek. I am kind of tempted to show off this rabid monster on a video on that show on that channel sometime in the near future, and I'll also be trying to review the new Kenobi series as well as the new season of Stranger Things. As far as more stuff on this channel, we have, I believe the only other show we have right now is Have You Seen This, with Daniel, Snark, and sometimes Dave, where they talk about less important television that isn't really Doctor Who related most of the times. And also Dave has his monthly Northern rankings, I should say, where they rank several different movies in a particular given franchise. This time they did the Star Wars movies, and we'll go ahead and watch that if you want to be disappointed with your rankings on your own. Speaking of Star Wars, two of the people who have appeared on the Northern rankings this month were Taco and Marie Wilson. Taco has his own YouTube channel with Marie Wilson called Something to Talk About, and he has a Star Wars show called Let's Talk About Star Wars. And finally, our good friend Jess the Kiwi has her own YouTube channel called Kiwi Jess, where she descends into madness. That is really all the plugs I can see for now regarding today's episode. Thank you for watching. Hope I helped to enlighten you all with some lesser known roles from these iconic actors. Hopefully, you'll be compelled to check them out for yourself, as I'm pretty sure I'm about to do myself after this show. So, while I tried to get control of this crazy little munchkin, from myself and from Leela and the rest of us right here on the Northern Entertainment Group YouTube channel, some Doctor Who quote that I can't really think of right now because I'm clearly getting distracted. Yeah. Subscribe to this channel or I'll kill her with this deadly jelly baby. Goodbye, everyone.